Website traffic is super important, but what's equally important, or possibly I would argue even more important, is how long people stay on your website. So a bunch of quick hits to your site from your Instagram account or from a Google search is awesome, but only awesome if those people hang around long enough to get to know your business, what you sell, and how you can help them. So the more time someone spends on your site in a single visit, the more likely they are to return later, the more trust you're building with them, the more likely they are to see you as an expert and to learn something from you, and the more likely that you'll get sales from this website traffic. So in this episode, I'm giving you 6 specific ways that you can change your website really to get people to hang around on it longer, to get your audience to just really soak up your website, have fun on it, and create a really engaging experience for them. So let's dive in. Hey guys, it's Elizabeth McCravey, and you're listening to the Breakthrough Brand Podcast. Each week, I'll bring you workshop-style trainings that teach you how to stand out online, design success from the inside out, and create a breakthrough business. It's time to turn viewers into raving fans and design the business and life of your dreams. I'm so excited you're here. Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Breakthrough Brand Podcast. I'm Elizabeth McCravey, and I'm so excited you're here. And fun thing, I think this is like the first time I've ever, maybe not ever in this many episodes, but I'm recording this episode on a Saturday afternoon. I actually just went out running errands and I bought a Christmas tree, a 9-foot Christmas tree that I'm really excited about that's still sitting in the car. And I'm recording this on a Saturday though, because next week, midweek, I'm going on vacation with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and my niece. And then obviously my husband Adam is coming as well. And we're going to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And so I'm really excited about that trip, but I'm like, I got to get some of this stuff ready so that you guys have a podcast episode and that my team can prep everything for this one for while I'm gone. So I'm really excited about this topic, increasing time spent on your website. So important and something that I think we often don't talk about or think about enough. We're like, let's just make it a pre-design. Let's just make it a good copy and leave it at that. But there are other things as well that contribute so much to the user experience, to how long people stay on your website, all of that kind of stuff. So many of you listening, like myself, you don't have a storefront for your business. Your website is your storefront. You're truly an online business. I say that's true for the majority of you who listen to this podcast. So similar to how if I were to spend an hour shopping at, let's say, Home Goods, an hour there, I'm very likely to buy something. Versus if I were to walk into Home Goods, stay there for 2 to 5 minutes, and then exit, I probably didn't buy anything. And there was probably actually a reason that I left so fast, probably not being satisfied with the experience. Like today, when I just went and bought this Christmas tree, I came in there with research, I shopped around, and I left having spent money. If I had just been in and out, it was likely going to have been because of a bad experience because I didn't find what I was looking for. So an hour of shopping or, even 30 minutes, you better believe that person is finding some good things. And so your website's the same way as that storefront. So time spent on your website matters more than those quick hits that end up leaving quickly once they get on there. So when we think about search engine optimization, I know you guys love to hear tips on this, but all of this stuff we're talking about relates so heavily to that because Google does care about engagement on your site and they will rank your website based on this. So let's say, just hypothetical situation, you ended up on the first page of Google for one of your dream search results. You're on the first page, people are clicking to it, but then everyone who clicks to your site from Google immediately clicks that back button back to Google. And that tells Google that you didn't provide what you said you were providing. People weren't happy with what Google showed them, and Google wants people to be happy. That's how they've stayed on top as a search engine, is because they're giving people relevant results to what was typed in. So if for your search, it doesn't feel relevant, or, if people are having a bad experience, it's not loading correctly, all these things we're going to talk about, and they click away, that's going to hurt your SEO. You're not going to be able to rank for that result anymore. Or if let's say you just have never even been able to rank at all, this kind of stuff is what's going to prevent you from getting there. So we want people to come to your website. We want them to stay a while, hang out, explore. We want them to sign up for things, to read your website copy, to click to multiple pages, all of that stuff. And for context, I want to give real quick, and then we're going to get into this first tip. But if you're new here, I'm a website designer. For context, I know this podcast talks about so many different things. I consider myself a business strategist as well, and I love talking about marketing and, copywriting and so many other things besides website design. But I am a website designer and I sell website templates. So all of this is coming from that perspective of what works from my years of experience. I've served hundreds of clients now through my template shop and custom work as well. And so that's what we're talking about today. All right, so let's get into this first tip to increase time spent on your website. So, first of all, you should follow all common web standards and expectations people have when it comes to website design. And I'm going to completely explain that if none of that makes sense to you. So, people will leave your website if it doesn't feel intuitive. And, the World Wide Web has been around for a while. We're all used to being on the internet at this point, and there are certain things that we expect a website to have, a website to do, ways we expect the website to act. And we as people really have no patience for when websites don't act the way they're supposed to. And you have probably experienced this as well. If it's confusing, if it won't load, if you're like, what even is happening here? I don't know what to do. You click away. So always assume that if your website is clunky or if it's not meeting what we're going to talk about, a common web standards, people really will just give up and they'll go somewhere else. So I love reinventing the wheel with some pieces of a website for sure, but there are also just common ways people expect things to work that you should abide by. So I want to give some common examples of this so you know what I'm talking about here. So your menu, if you have a menu on whatever page people are viewing on, it should be at the top of the page. If you're doing what we call a hamburger menu where you have to click it open in order to see what's inside, then it should look like those hamburger icons or say something to imply that it's a menu. If we just put some random symbol in the top right or left corner of your website, people aren't going to know that they should click on it. When it comes to hyperlinking text, when text is linked, it should be underlined or a different color or something changed to it in order for people to know that it's a link versus just regular text within a paragraph. Underline is the most common thing we see here to indicate that it's a link. Buttons, when we think about buttons on a website, they're typically a rectangle with text on it. If you suddenly make all of your buttons stars with another icon in the middle of it, let's say, people won't understand that it's a button they should click on. So those are just some quick examples. And if you just go and explore websites in general, just pick any website and go look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about. If there are just common things where it's we don't even think about it at this point, but we expect it to be this way. Some other things, this one's so huge, but your website should load quickly. And you are not a special snowflake in the sense of people are only going to wait so long for your website to load. Even if you were the first hit on Google, even if they're so excited to see what it is you're selling and creating, even if you were referred by someone to them, they're only going to wait so long. Your website should be mobile responsive, which means that it's set up really well on mobile for phones in addition to desktop, also working well for iPads and other types of devices. So much traffic now to your website. You can look this up in your own Google Analytics to see what I mean, but I'd imagine it's probably at least half of your traffic is coming from phones. So that means your mobile website design matters so much. And that's something I take so seriously as a website designer of trying to focus just as much, if not more, on the mobile design as I do on desktop. And something I really love about Showit in general, which is the website builder my templates work with, but also the way my templates are set up. When you're thinking about buying one, you're probably looking at it on desktop, but if you look at it on mobile, you'll see that it's also really beautifully designed, strategically designed, and everything is working really well on that end as well. So that's one thing, mobile responsiveness. Another thing, your website should not have tons of pop-ups that are hard to get to go away. That's so frustrating. And just the other day, actually, I was on a website. This was so frustrating. I really wanted to see what they had on the site. It was some news article, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but it had an automatic pop-up on the homepage, which, is pretty common. I don't necessarily agree with automated pop-ups immediately when you land on a website, which is a whole nother conversation. I've done a podcast about that, but I don't love it. But anyway, this pop-up comes up, and normally when, we think about what I'm saying here, common web standards, when a pop-up comes up, we can normally click it off with an X that's in the right corner or at the top center sometimes of that pop-up. Or sometimes it'll just say close somewhere, something like that, but we know there's a button to click it away. And normally, if we don't want to, we just click off the X and we continue scrolling. And this site's X was not showing up on my iPhone. I think it was there, but it was cut off in the way the website design was set up. And I have a normal iPhone, nothing like crazy junky phone or something like that could have created the issue itself. So I literally could not access the site, and I kept clicking back, going back to the page, the pop-up kept coming up, and I kept not being able to click it off. Super frustrating. I left and found another website, and I hurt that website's bounce rate because I was trying to go to it and I was immediately clicking off within seconds because the site wasn't working. So that's just a quick example, but adhering to what people expect on a website from a user experience perspective will put you in a great position to keep people actively engaged with your website. And not only engaged, but coming back for more. Like for me, when I think about that particular website with the frustrating pop-up, I'm like, if I see that on Google search results again, I actually remember what website it is. So I might be like, yeah, I'm not clicking that one. And if, in general, if you have a bad experience with a website, you're probably not going to go back to it. So that is my first big tip. Follow common website standards and expectations. Make sure everything is intuitive. Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed, so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravy.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravy.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. All right, the second tip, create fresh content on your website frequently. So when it comes to your website, when we're talking about content, what I mean by that is blogging. And I think sometimes people think that just means like you're just writing a blog post, multiple times a week or every week or whatever. It can actually mean podcasting, YouTubing, all kinds of things. And I talked about this on a podcast recently. I was on Rick Mulready's podcast, which seriously, go listen to it if you haven't yet. I love our conversation, and he is a client of mine and will be on this podcast at some point as well. But we talked about this, that blogging isn't dead. And I think a lot of times people say blogging's dead. And the people saying it are people who are making podcasts, they're creating YouTube videos, and they're doing other forms of content. And the irony of all of it is they are actually blogging all of that content to their website as blog posts. And so when people are discovering you on your website, though, Here's why I really don't think blogging is dead. When people discover you on your website, they'll often click over to your blog to see what you're sharing there. And I know for me, many people discover this podcast through my blog on my website because we blog every single episode. So I am not only a podcaster, but you could also say I blog as well. And, I've podcasted now for over a year. We're getting close to 100 episodes, which I'm so stoked about. I cannot believe it. But even before podcasting, I had an active blog on my website since 2016. And again, I blog regularly now once a week with this podcast, and I do contribute blogging in those early years as a way I built my business. I built credibility. I built authority in the industry as someone who knew something about website design by writing about it. And I think blogging is so important. So even with podcasting now, I still blog. Plenty of people read the blog version of these episodes instead of just listening, or they'll listen even from the podcast player within those blog posts. So anyway, the point is content is so important. And when we talk about increasing time people spend on your website, I feel like it's almost just super obvious of how content can do that, because there's something to read, there's something to watch, there's something to engage in. At the end of a post, you can direct them to another post. When it's fresh content frequently, like even just a monthly blog post can do wonders because you have a reason to direct people to your website. Whereas a common problem I see is that people might launch their website, they make a huge thing of it, of like, oh, my new website's here, yay, let's all celebrate, go look at it. And then all of a sudden you don't have any reason to tell people to go to your website anymore. And so just sit stale because you're not creating any kind of content. So by creating content, you can guide people between posts and keep them on your website longer, whether they're reading, watching a video, listening to your podcast through your website, looking at your beautiful portfolio of a recent work you did as a designer or photographer, interior designer, whatever kind of work it is. It feels obvious. Again, you guys know content creation is important. So consider this. If this is something you're not doing and you're like, I want people to hang out on my website longer, consider creating more content. Maybe go write the blog post you've been putting off that you've maybe had, as a draft on your blog post forever. Go publish it. Create some fresh content. Okay, now for the third thing, 3 of 6. So use internal links and buttons to guide people along on your website. So I have a rule of thumb in my own business, and feel free to take this as well, but that in every blog post, I want to have at least a few. I don't have a specific number I'm sharing. I don't know how many we actually typically do, but at least a few internal links in every blog post. And an internal link is when you're linking to something within your own website, and an external link is when you're linking to someone else's website. So on top of that though, on my blog, if you go to read, like let's say the post for this episode, you can click over to it in the show notes, but there's a related post area when you scroll to the bottom where you can literally see other posts that are common to this one. And then there's a sidebar with more options to keep people engaged. All of my website templates are set up this way as well. They're set up so that you can keep people on the blog area and really pull them in with a blog post even, but then direct them to things like your service page, your about page, other categories of posts, all of that kind of stuff. So obviously with that though, internal links guide people around your website. So when we talk about blogging specifically, you want to have internal links in your blog post wherever it makes sense. And like we were saying in tip number 1, you want it to be obvious that that's an internal link. So like when you're linking text in your settings, make sure it's underlining it or changing colors or something like that so that people know it's a link. Related posts at the end of each post is amazing as well. And then on your website in general, if we want to talk just outside of blogging with this tip, you want to always be telling people where they should go next through calls to action. So guide them to another page on your website when they get to the bottom of that page that they're on. In your footer, which is on every page of your website, you should always be having something there to guide people to. It might be links within your own site or, opting in for a freebie or something like that. But even in addition to that, you can put a call to action at the end. So I want to share real fast for a few common website pages that many of you will have on your site. Some of these you definitely have, many of them, and what you could link to as a call to action at the end of each of these pages. So on your homepage, a great call to action would be to your services page or to a specific service, or the page that shows the overview of all the different ways to work with you. On your about page, linking to your services page is another great one. Call people to action of like, have they enjoyed getting to know you on this page? Go check out ways to work with you. On your services page, since we just talked about that one twice, linking to your contact page or whatever it is that they need to do to start working with you is great. So if that's filling out your contact form, if it's an application, if it's a purchase page, whatever it is, linking to that. On your portfolio page, thinking of that similar to the service page, it's great to link out to that call to action to contact you about working together through your contact page or a call schedule page or whatever it is. So there's just some quick ideas, but try to think about that within your own website of like, what action do I want people to take once they're done consuming the content on this page? Always be telling people what you think they should do next. And, that's what we mean when we say calls to action. But it is like, people will do whatever they want to do, but it is helpful to say like, hey, you just consumed this content. Here's where to go next. You consume this. Here's where to go next. And just guide them along on your website as if it is a journey. So that's the third one. Use internal links and buttons to guide people around your website. All right, number 4. I really love this one. Also, I should point out here, these are in no particular order, just literally the order that I thought of them in when I was outlining this, but I really love this one. So focus on writing excellent headlines and then deliver on those headlines. So interesting fact here, and I can link to this source in the show notes, but 8 out of 10 people will read your headline, but only 2 out of 10 people will read the content under the headline. How fascinating is that? So the interesting thing about that is that you could have the best content ever, the best blog post, the best about me section, the best description of your service, the best sales page, whatever it is. But a bland headline will mean that's not read, not heard, not seen, whatever it is. And, when we say headlines, headline means like the top section of text, or also could be the title of a blog post or podcast episode if we want to think about it this way. But it's really whatever the main thing of that section or page or whatever it is. And an example from podcasting that I think is really interesting, and it makes this point so clear, but we've all seen podcasts where the title just doesn't interest you at all. And so you don't listen to it. Like simple enough, you don't listen to it. Or, a blog post where the title's not interesting, you don't read it. Same with YouTube, same with a page on a website. And with podcasting specifically, something that always sticks out to me is when there's podcast episodes where the title of the episode is just the guest's name. So it's like so-and-so and so-and-so, that's just all the title is. And that totally works for some people. Like I've seen people where it's like, all of your podcasts are titled this way. You've already built up an audience, or the guest is really noteworthy. So like just seeing that person's name is enough for us to want to listen to it. But if you see that and you're like, I don't know who this interviewer is, I don't know who the guest is, then you're probably not going to listen to it. And it could be amazing conversation on a topic that you're super interested in, but you might miss it because the title tells you nothing about why you should listen to it, why you should consume this content. So the same principle goes for all content, even down to your about page. When it starts with, as an example, this is my pet peeve of website design, FYI. But when you have an about page or any page on your website that starts with, hi, welcome to my website. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for popping in. So incredible you're reading this. It's like, just get to the point. People will click away. That's not a great headline. So master your headlines is the point here. Focus on that. Test out different headlines on your website. Same for podcast episodes, whatever it is, but test it out and change it based on what you see working and not working. If you think of blog posts as an example, if you're like, this blog post is really great, but like it's not ranking on Google, people don't really seem to be reading it, they click to it, and then the bounce rate, they just bounce away. Try a new headline and see if that changes anything. For podcasting, that's so huge of like seeing, with this episode, like I have a headline in mind, but we could end up needing to change it later if we feel like it's not resonating with people. So with a headline, a few tips here. I have actually some few like quick headline tips in a moment, but another tip for writing it, write the headline concept before you start writing the content. Basically, what I mean by that is come up with the promise first, and then make sure that the content you're writing aligns with the promise that you're saying this content is going to bring. So like with this episode as an example, I don't have the exact title, also called a headline. I mean those interchangeably. You might have noticed that already as I've talked through this, but I don't have that nailed down to a T yet as I'm creating this. But I know what my promise is. My promise is I'm giving you tips that'll help people stay on your website longer. So as I was outlining this and thinking about what tips to share, I knew they needed to relate back to that particular promise. So that's just helpful to keep in mind. Work on that first. And I also recommend writing a few headlines and seeing what sounds best. And it's often not going to be the first one you think of. So try a few out. Like, when we think about, let's say your about page, since I used that as an example a moment ago, try out a few things at the top of that page when you're writing your website copy. See what works, see what resonates with you, and then you can always change them out. Okay, so some fast headline tips though, for writing headlines. First tip I have for you, make a promise in your headline and then be sure to deliver on the promise. But think about it as a promise of whatever that thing is that the headline's for that's going to deliver that, and make sure you deliver. And when we talk about keeping people engaged on your website, coming back for more, delivery on the promise is so huge. So if they're intrigued by your headline, but then they start reading it, it has nothing to do with the headline, or it's like, yeah, this actually isn't going to help at all, they're going to leave. But if they start reading it and then they're like, oh yeah, this matches up perfectly with what it said it's going to do, this is actually exactly what I need to hear, then they're going to stay. So make a promise in your headline. Another tip, use list and odd numbers for your headline. So lists in general it's so digestible. People really like lists. They feel easy to consume. It gives a clear outcome, maybe more than a non-list when it comes to headlines. With this particular episode, I think we'll end up doing 6 ways, 6 tricks, 6 tips, something like that, in the way it's titled. Then using odd numbers. The thing about this, it's so fascinating to me when we think about psychology and marketing, but people like odd numbers. And here's why, here's what research thinks the reason is, at least, is because it feels more natural and authentic. Which, funny enough, with this episode, I'm using 6 instead of an odd number. I could have gone 5, or I could have added another one and done 7. For me, 6 is actually more authentic because I'm just like, this is actually just how many tips I have. But with marketing, people do see odd numbers as more natural and authentic because they're not rounding to get to that even number. So for example, if I have 9 ways to do something as my tip instead of 10 ways, it feels more real. There's just something about it that it's 9 and not 10. I didn't add an extra to get myself to 10. I just had 9. So when you think about that with headlines, consider using odd numbers. Also, write the number as the number, not written out as a word. It resonates more with people just to see the number itself. And with lists, another people really like lists is that they're easily skimmable, so people can read the headline for each of the 5 things within the list and then see which one of these do I actually need to hear and skim around as needed. So anyway, headlines are so important when it comes to your website. It's important for keeping people on the site. Great headlines are going to encourage them to read what's underneath it in every little section of your website. Whatever it says above the main body of text, if it's engaging, it'll keep people around more. And I do feel like I need to point out right here, I have a guide on writing headlines that you can get on my website. It's a freebie. It's kind of like Mad Lib style, and it's 11 headline formulas. So it's like plug and play with examples of here's exactly how to make this headline work. And you just enter your content into it. And so definitely check that out as you're writing your website copy, especially any sales copy is what's really going to work well for. But it's a really great freebie. Tons of people have downloaded it at this point, and I even reference my own freebie sometimes for writing website copy. So go to elizabethmccravey.com/headline, just all one word, headline, and you'll be able to get that. And I'll link to that in show notes as well. But that will also help you with this particular tip. All right, so number 5, don't make people hunt on your website for important information. So I always just love to tell people your website is not a treasure hunt, so do not treat it like one. Don't waste people's time. Make things easy to find, easy to navigate around. And this kind of feels similar to what I already shared in tip number 1. But finding information that should be expected on any particular page should be easy for the user. Don't leave them guessing. Don't leave them hunting. tell them what they're there to find. So as an example, let's say someone's on your service page and they're just like, I just want to know what the availability is or how much it should cost or whatever it is, a range of something. They shouldn't have to hunt for it stuck in the middle of some paragraph. A big one I see often of people just totally missing on their website. If your location is relevant at all to someone hiring you, looking at you photographers, when I say that information should be really easy to find on your website, not buried in a paragraph about your family and your dogs on your about page. It should be multiple spots, front and center, so people can see, hey, I'm interested in hiring you, but I live in Nashville, wondering where you live. They need to be able to figure it out. So tying this back to time spent on a website specifically, and this is a really short tip here, but if they can't find what they're looking for, just in a few seconds, short attention spans, guys, they're going to peace out and go find someone else who can give them what they're needing. So make sure information is clear. And here's like just a quick rule of thumb to kind of help you guys with this. If you're like, Elizabeth, I don't really know if it's easy to find. Go to any page on your website. Maybe go through all the pages right now when you're done listening to this episode, but just ask yourself, when someone's consuming this content, assuming they actually really consume it and you have your website set up in such a way that people will really read it, ask yourself, what information is most important on this page? What will people be wanting to know next? And is it easy to find? Like seriously, you guys, price is a great example on like service pages, application pages, all of that. Like if you're not going to tell people the price yet, maybe like make that obvious somewhere that like they have to schedule a call with you to know the price or whatever. But like don't make people hunt around for that stuff. They don't want to have to hunt around for it. Okay, so my sixth tip, and I'm going to recap all the tips with some questions to help you like really just think about your own website. But the sixth tip, use engaging design. Now, you didn't think I could talk about spending time on a website without mentioning great design, right? I've said this one's the last one, but this really would be like number one in my mind if we were going through these in levels of importance. So I want to tell you some reasons for this, but going back to short attention spans, usability, all of it. Great design is so key. And even if you're like, I don't think of myself or my audience as a group who cares about design, and that might be totally true. You might be like, my audience doesn't care if the fonts are all pretty and the colors are awesome or whatever. This still matters, and they care in a different way than you might even be thinking of because they care about the experience anywhere they're going to stay a while. So like to kind of bring restaurants as an example of this, you probably don't want to go out on a nice long dinner date at Hardee's or spend your whole evening in a Taco Bell. Maybe you do, but I'm guessing you probably don't. But a better experience of a place, you could hang around a long time with beautiful interior, fine food, great service, comfort, etc. All of that is going to make you want to hang out longer. Websites are the same way. When it's beautifully designed, when it's a great user experience, people are going to keep coming back for more and they'll stay around longer. That's beautiful, that's engaging, intriguing, all of those kinds of things. So it really does matter. The design matters. Even if you're like, I don't really care about design at all, it still matters because it contributes to the overall experience. It contributes to how people see your brand and business overall. And even like another thing, I don't have this in my notes, but thinking about it right now, when we talk about the concept of building authority and how that's something that helps people come back to your website, again, like thinking about Google search, it's like if we click over to your website and it really kind of sucks, people are not going to see you as an authority on whatever topic they search for, and they might just click away. Like this person doesn't have the answers. They clearly don't because of the way their website looks, right? So ask yourself, if your website were a restaurant, making me hungry talking about food right now, would you want to spend the evening dining there? Would you want to go there for your birthday dinner? I know that's a funny analogy, and I hope that makes sense and isn't lost on you all because I know it's kind of a weird analogy, but design matters so much. And it really ties into everything when it comes to your website. Like, I feel like I don't talk about design enough because to me, sometimes it feels so obviously like a solution to so many website problems, like just having better design. But I know that it's not necessarily that obvious. It's a piece of all of these pieces, but it's one that matters so much. So that's my last tip. Use engaging design, make sure it's beautiful, and then people are naturally going to want to spend more time on it. So I want to recap all of these. I'm going to recap them question style. And so if you've been maybe multitasking, listening to this, maybe you're driving at the gym, maybe you're working. I know a lot of you guys say that you'll listen to this podcast while you're doing like editing your images as a photographer, or maybe designing a website, some things like that, where it's fun to listen to something in the background. I want to ask you for a little bit more focus real quick and really think about your answers to these questions. And then it'll help you kind of know which of these tips should you take action on. Because I know 6 is a lot and we're all busy and you probably don't want to like go necessarily pay attention to all of these on your website right now. So ask yourself with all these questions where you stand on them. So the first one, are you following expected web standards for user experience? Does your website make sense? Do people know what buttons are? Do people understand where the menu is? Is it intuitive? Or alternatively, is your website maybe hard to navigate and confusing to the user in some way? Second question, are you creating content on your website through a blog? That one's an obvious yes or no. Like, when was the last time you blogged a new piece of content? Are you giving people a reason to pop back up in your website to see what's new? Like, are you talking about it? That's a great idea right there of just on Instagram, on your email marketing, whatever, direct people back to your website, find more reasons to do that. But then my question here of like following up on that is your website the same as when you first launched it? Like, has it just not been updated in forever? Or are you creating fresh content? If you're not, maybe make a game plan for creating a blog post soon. Third question, are you linking internally within your blog post? And then do each of your website pages have a clear call to action of another page the person should visit next? So make sure you're linking internally and then just throughout the whole website, directing people to hang around longer. Hey, go here next. Hey, go here next. Just those subtle call to actions, or not so subtle as well, but just calls to actions throughout. Fourth question, are your headlines smart and well thought out? Then with that, are you delivering on the promise in the headline? Maybe some of your pages where you're like, I really want people to be on here more, but they're not. Looking at your Google Analytics is a great way to like get some insight into all this, but consider changing up some of the headlines, the titles, the big pieces of text that are basically helping people decide if they're going to read what's underneath it. So are your headlines smart and well thought out? Fifth question, is the important information on each page easy to find, or do users have to hunt it down? So think about, again, I already kind of asked this question, but like on each page, what's the information that matters the most? Is it easy to find, or is it stuck in the middle of a paragraph? Make sure it's easy to find. And then the last question, is your site's design engaging to the eye? Does it make you want to explore more? Does it make you want to hang out? Is it fun? Or is it kind of stale? And you're like, I don't even think I'd want to hang out on my website. Why would I expect my ideal clients to? So those are the 6 questions and the 6 tips to increase time spent on your website. I really hope you enjoy these, and seriously, fixing these things up. I know it's a lot of information, but like maybe re-listen, look at the blog post for this episode if you want to kind of like rethink some of this and see which ones you need to focus on. But like keep these tips, help people keep coming back and really engage with your content while you're there. And I do feel like I cannot end this episode without saying this. But if you're listening to this live or semi-live, my big Black Friday sale is going to be happening soon. And I'm really stoked about it. It's a great time to get a new website if you're thinking like, I need these tips. Like I need something needs to fix here. Starting over with a really strategic, well-designed, well thought out, experience-wise, user experience-wise, all of it. Website can be huge for your business. So definitely check out my website templates. They are set up to match all of these things for you and to make these things easy for you. So you still have to do the work, like you still have to write the blog posts and things like that. But from a design perspective and a strategy perspective, they're set up so that like this stuff of people spending more time on your website, hanging around longer, finding you on Google, all of it can naturally happen. So definitely check those out. Take the website personality quiz if you haven't already. It's at elizabethmccravy.com/style. And that'll put you on my email list. You'll get details about the sale when it happens. And if you're listening far into the future, go take the quiz still and get information about the website templates. Feel free to reach out to myself and my team with any questions. We're here to help you find the perfect website for you and your business. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll be back next Tuesday with another new episode. All right, bye you guys. Thank you for listening to the podcast this week, friend. I appreciate you being here. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, I want to tell you about something. I would encourage you to check out my website template shop. Over on elizabethmccravy.com, you'll find Show It website templates, and they are easy to use, strategically designed, and created to help you book more clients and customers. Maybe your current website is really boring. I don't know, maybe it is, and maybe you don't want to hurt its feelings, but you know it's true. And your website needs to be strategically and intentionally designed in order for it to convert your viewers into raving customers. And that's what these website templates do on MShop. These are pre-made website templates built for the Show It platform where you can plug and play your content into the template with ease and then get started with a website that is made to actually make you money. Isn't that what we all want, right? So go shop the templates at elizabethmccravy.com/shop. That link is also in the show notes. And don't forget that you can actually subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening so that you never miss an episode. And I would so appreciate it if you left a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or even just share it with a friend. It's a great way to support the show and then give us your feedback. So thanks so much for listening.